All right.
Who's iPhone 74? Is that 74 people on here? That's
No,
all.
no.
I don't know, man. I'm looking at iPhone 74. Oh, is it all me now? Oh, sweet. Oh, iPhone 74 says me. That's helpful. That's fantastic. Um,
It's me, it's Kara. Sorry, I'm at the
oh,
gym.
what's up, Kara? How are you?
Good, how are you?
I am blessed. I really am. Hey,
Good.
so this is not at all. You guys know me. I usually have a PowerPoint and all that stuff, and this is not that. This is a conversation. So, if everybody unmutes their stuff, I'm good with it, man. Questions, comments. I'm obviously going to lead the conversation, but I want to have a conversation about this because I feel like this is a very, very important conversation to have. And I'm gonna start it off by asking you guys a question. Does standing in a garage make you a car?
In 2026, yes.
Probably. Yeah, as long
Okay.
as you have enough protesters outside. Does it make you a car? No, it doesn't make you a car. You can't stand in a garage and claim to be a car. You're a human standing in a garage. So to take it a step further, if I'm standing in a church, does that make me a Christian?
No,
No, that's not how that works. If I'm standing in a synagogue, does that make me a Jew?
No,
No, no. If I'm standing in a mosque, does that make me a Muslim?
no,
No. So I want to clarify the conversation we're going to have tonight. I'm not saying that every Muslim person that is referenced is the Muslim person that I'm talking about, because just like Christianity, there's a sadly there's a lot of Christians who claim Christ, who go to church, but they're really not walking the walk, they're not talking the talk. And there's a lot of Muslims who um they claim it from heritage points of view, like they claim to be Muslim from a family point of view, but ideologically and theologically, they're no more Muslims than me standing in a car claiming to be a garage. I want to make sure that's crystal clear. Did I say standing in a car make me a garage? I saw Mark's face. Good for you catching that, man. I want to make that clear because my intent through this conversation tonight is not to say that every single person who's a Muslim fits the bill on what I'm talking about. I want to make sure, is everybody clear on that? Give a thumbs up in the comments or something like. I want to make sure that we're clear on that. As many of you who will undo your video so I can see your face, that would be just wonderful. But I get it if you don't. But that's there you go, Joshua. Thank you. Um, so I want to make sure we're clear on that because some of the things I'm going to say, I don't want it to come across as though well, first of all, the term Islamophobic, phobic means fear. I'm not afraid of anybody in Islam. Just like when people say, well, Christians are homophobic, I'm not afraid of anybody who's homosexual. That's not a proper term. If I was afraid of anybody in Islam, I'm headed there. I'm headed to Nigeria in March. There's there's a lot of Christians getting slaughtered in Nigeria right now. Huge problem, as a matter of fact. Thank you guys for letting me see your face. That's awesome. There's a lot of Christians getting slaughtered in Nigeria right now. If I was Islamophobic, would I be going to Nigeria right now? No, but I'm not afraid of anybody in Islam. So I want to make sure all of those things are crystal clear before we begin to talk because why I feel like this is such a conversation that needs to be had. I included it in my faith survival guide. I included a section of it. In fundamentals of the faith, I include a section of it. And on Equip You, I'm planning on doing a more expository talk on it while I'm at Equip You doing courses and stuff like that. Um, Islam is a very viable threat to our culture, to our families, to our um, just to our entire environment. We need to understand where they come from in order to understand where they're going with this. So if you don't know, Islam began back when Abraham was promised by God. Abram at that point was promised by God to have a seed, and that seed would produce enough offspring that would be like the sands of the sea or the stars in the sky. And Abram and Sarai, at this point in time, her name was Sarai. She convinced Abram that God's promises were not going to come to fruition through her because of her age, and so she persuaded him. And ladies, that's where we need to understand that you have the power of persuasion over men. You really do. You have the power of influence, and so she used that influence over Abram at the time. Their names eventually were changed to Abraham and Sarah, which weren't all that inventive coming from Abram and Sarai. But anyway, so she convinces Abram that he should fulfill God's promise of offspring to through Hagar, which was their servant, their handmaid. And so Abram stupidly, he should have, just like Adam should have said, no, Eve, I'm not doing that. Abram should have said, no, Sarai, that's a terrible idea, but he didn't. And so Abram takes Hagar as his um, baby mama. We're going to use a 21st century term, and from that relationship comes Ishmael. And Ishmael was born, and Ishmael was not the promised child that God had promised to Abraham. The promised child to Abraham was Isaac. Isaac ends up coming from his loins through Sarah. After a little while, she ends up getting pregnant, and she has Isaac. Isaac is the father of Jacob. Jacob is renamed Israel, and so that's where we get the 12 tribes of Israel is from the 12 sons of Jacob. And we go back to Ishmael and realize that's where, according to the Muslims, that's where the Islamic faith started, was through Ishmael. They believe Ishmael was the promised son. They believe that Ishmael was the one who was taken up onto the mount, not Isaac. That Ishmael was the one who was taken up onto the mount to be sacrificed, and that God provided the ram as a way out. So that's what they believe at the very core. I always tell people, I'm like, if you're really trying to figure out what's going on in the world, don't worry about China or Russia or United States. Look at what's going on between Ishmael and Isaac, and that translates to Islam and Judaism. That's what's really the crux of what has been going on from the beginning of everything. And so you fast forward through the years, and and we know that Jacob, or I'm sorry, Joseph, son of Jacob, was in the well. Remember, his brothers threw him down in the well, and who came through and bought him? The Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites buy Joseph, and they take him into Egypt, and they sell him into slavery. And of course, Joseph becomes a huge portion of Egypt's history because he interprets the dreams of Pharaoh and survives them through the 7 years of famine and all that stuff. But you got to remember who was that came through? That was the Ishmaelites. So the Ishmaelites in Judaism have been at it from day one. Ishmael and Isaac have been at it from day one. That's the core of the beginning of Islam, according to Islamic belief, that Ishmael was the father. Fast forward to modern day, and we look and we see that Israel's in a portion of the land that's about the size of New Jersey. It's a very small, tiny portion of land that they have, and that was established back in 1948, May 14th, 1948, at the stroke of midnight. David Ben-Gurion read the Declaration of Independence for the modern nation of Israel. Truman, our president of the United States, was the first one to acknowledge the new established nation of Israel. On May 15th began the War of Independence in Israel, where five major Arab nations went and attacked Israel. And I say Arab because what I'm meaning is Muslims. They were Islamic nations who came against Israel at that time and tried to thwart the beginning of this new nation of Israel that we now see today. So again, if you want to know what's going on in the world, it's not China, it's not Russia, it comes down to what is going on between Isaac and Ishmael, what's going on between Islam and Judaism. And so what people don't understand about the nature of Islam is this. Let me back up to ours. Our founder is Jesus Christ. On the cross, Jesus literally hangs there and says, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they're doing." One of the greatest moments of compassion that I believe has ever been on the planet Earth was through our Messiah, where he was offering, forgiveness to those who were crucifying him at the moment. So that's our founder. Muhammad is the founder of Islam. Um, I'll get back to some of the roots of how that started in just a second, but you got to understand when Muhammad was dying on his deathbed, he fought bloody wars all the way up till his deathbed, and on his deathbed, he was commanding his militia to slay him where you find him, to slay the infidel, to put to death anybody who would disagree with Islamic doctrine, with Islam. And you got to understand, it's more of an ideology than it is a theology. It's a governing ideology. When Muhammad fought those wars back in the late 600s, middle 600s to late 600s, early to middle 600s, he was dominating the world at the time, and that was the whole goal of Islam. Islam in its translation means submission. That's what Islam means. It means submission, submission to Allah, and I won't say the rest of it because that's their prayer of salvation. But it's recognizing Muhammad and Allah. And so let me go back to the foundations where Muhammad started. So Muhammad comes up around the early 600s, late 500s, early 600s, and I believe he was a real person. I don't contend with that. He actually was a worker in the trade industry. He was working on getting trade exported from one nation to another. He was working for a woman named Khadijah. She was the daughter of the uncle that he had, that he was working for. And so Muhammad goes up to this mountain, this cave in a mountain, and he supposedly has this vision from the same angel Gabriel that said, I bring you peace of great and news of great joy, tidings for all. That same Gabriel supposedly in Muhammad's vision was the one that gave him the words to pen the Quran. And so he immediately thinks that this is all again, you can go fact check everything I'm saying. This is just nuts and bolts of it. He immediately thinks he's being possessed by a demon. And he's scared because of the way that the interaction went. I mean, the angel was squeezing him so hard that he was scared for his life, and then the angel was telling him to read, but he didn't know what to read and he didn't know how to read and all this stuff. You can look all this up, because I want to go somewhere with all this, but I want to lay the foundation first, and then open this up for discussion. So he's afraid. He thinks that he's being possessed by a demon. And so Khadijah, his cousin that he was working for her dad, his cousin is the first convert, you could say, to Muslim, to Islam. That she was the one who convinced him this was an angelic visit. He thought it was a demonic encounter. She said, no, this is an angelic visit. So he begins to understand, okay, I'm being visited by the angel Gabriel, and he begins to pen the words of the Quran. And just as a side note, the Quran doesn't make any sense. It starts with the longest surah or chapter and goes to the shortest one as far as like wordage, right? And so it's not in a chronological order whatsoever. It goes from the longest verses to the shortest verses. So, the beginning verses in 95. Well, that's chapter 95 is the beginning verse. Why wouldn't it be verse 1, like with Genesis 1:1? Because it's going from the longest to the shortest. So even Islamic scholars will admit that it's kind of a hard book to really wrap your head around. So they have to have the Hadith, which is a commentary that was written by the holy seers afterwards, and they have the Sirat, which is the biography of Muhammad, and they have to take the Quran, the Hadith, and the Sirat, put them all together to figure out what exactly is this saying. What people don't understand is there are two versions within the Quran. There's the beginning of Muhammad's visions, which was in Mecca, which is over in Saudi Arabia, which ironically is where Hagar, when she was told to leave, when Sarah got mad that she made the decision to have Ishmael, and all of a sudden Sarah gets upset and casts her out. She sends her into the deserts of Haran, which is in Saudi Arabia, and so you get Mecca over in Saudi Arabia. Ironically, again, that's where Hagar and Ishmael first started off. And so he's in Mecca, and he's getting these visions from through Gabriel from Allah, and they're somewhat peaceful. they're not too bad. There's even talks of forgiveness and grace and things like that. They're not too bad. But he was rejected by his the Korash tribe, his original tribe of people. He was rejected by them, and he even said when he first got his vision, he was like, "I'm not going back to the Korash tribe and telling them anything that I heard because they're going to say that I'm a man possessed by demons." And sure enough, in the Quran, you can read that it says that. So he leaves Mecca, he goes to Medina, and in Medina, that's where he gets these further revelations. And the further revelations, and I can spit out dozens of them where it's cut them off where they're at, cut them off, cut their heads off, slay them where you find them, have them pay the jizya tax or commit to Islam by saying the prayer or there's all these different things. But the bottom line is make them submit because again, Islam means submission. So back in that day, you've got two different versions going on. You've got the Meccan version, which is about one third of the Quran. You have the other two thirds is the Medinian verses. The Medinian verses are evil. They're just flat out evil. They are very, kill them where you find them. That's the Medinian verses. There's no grace. There's no mercy. There's a lot of laws for how many times to pray and how to pray and what to pray and all that stuff. Um, One of the first things I want to point out is in Islam, there's something known as the law of abrogation. The law of abrogation allows Allah to change his mind. Now, Christians, I want to point out something pretty important. If our God, if Jehovah, if Yahweh, if Jesus in the Bible changes his mind, what does that do to our theology? Thank you, man. I mean, it's gone. I mean, that's I am God. I do not change. That is Malachi tells us. I am God. I do not change. So the fact that the law of abrogation exists within Islamic doctrine is already a scary thing because at this point, the Meccan verses don't mean anything. The Medinian verses overachieve that because they're written later and they change the way that the Meccan verses sound and feel to the point where now it's okay. What is that? A poodle? Is it just a mutt? What is it? It's a mutt? I can't hear
It's a
you.
schnoodle.
A schnoodle. What is that? A Shih Tzu poodle?
A schnauzer and a poodle.
Oh, I see that now. I like that. It's a good dog. Yeah. So that should be scary enough as it is, the fact that they've got the law of abrogation that allows them to literally say that Allah changed his mind about things and now he feels this way versus this way. Um, there's also something known as taqiyya and kitman. Those are two doctrines within Islamic theology. And what that basically taqiyya is if it advances Islamic cause to lie about your faith, to lie in any way, it's okay. So that's Takia. Kitman goes into a war mode where it says, um, basically, not only is it okay to lie about your religion, you're committed to lie about your religion in order for Islamic cause to go forward. Um, I know we're recorded, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it. And if people don't like it, they can take it up with me later. It is my it is my belief through a lot of research that our President Obama was a Muslim. He's had a lot of different signs about when he would talk about the Bible, he would mock Adam and Eve as a real historical people, but yet when he got to the Quran, he wouldn't say the Quran, he would say the Holy Quran. Like it changed his vocabulary. He longed for the memories of a child when the Islamic prayers would go forth from the mosques. And I remember the first time I heard that was in Nigeria, and I was like, "Whoa, man! They've got loudspeakers, big giant speakers on every corner of the mosque and every 10 feet." And when they broadcast prayer, you can't unhear it. Like but he would recall it as a child and in such a fantastic way that he would hear it. And so it is my belief that what he did was he was using Taqiyya and Kitman, the doctrines of Islamic theology, to come in and infiltrate from the inside out. And that's what's still happening to this day. We see this happening throughout our government, where just in Georgia alone, I believe there was dozens of people running for different offices within Georgia alone that were all um, clear Muslims. They weren't trying to not be Muslims, because now the door has been kicked open because of what Obama was able to accomplish with Islamic doctrine getting into there. And you see, you know, uh, different senators and stuff that just Congress people that it has got. I mean, Mom Donnie has just been elected into New York's mayoral role in New York, was it 24 years ago? 24 years ago, going on 25 this year will be the 25th year anniversary that Islam took down the World Trade Centers. Um, I remember that day like it was yesterday, and people were saying, "Never forget, never forget, never forget." 24 years later, they elect Mamdani as the mayor, and I'm going, "What are you thinking?" And if you don't think that Sharia law has already got its way into America, just look at Dearborn, Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan is Sharia law. If you're a Christian and you go to try and share the gospel in Dearborn, Michigan, what's going to happen is you're going to incite a riot, and you're going to get arrested as the one who is inciting the violence, not the people who are being violent against you. You will get arrested for being the one who is inciting the violence by trying to share the gospel, just a simple gospel. Sharia law is already here. Um, 15 miles up the road from where I'm at, up right above Commerce, Georgia. There's a terrorist training camp there that I can run you by there and show you where it's at. Back when in 2001, when 9/11 happened, two of the terrorists that were pilots of those planes trained at that location that's just right up the road from me. They actually got their air flight training at the airport in Lawrenceville, which I've flown out of with the Briars one time, and I was just thinking, wow, this is where they trained to learn how to fly. But they trained right up the road, and I can take you by there, and if you drive by real slow. You're going to get them to follow you. There's a white truck that sits at the end of the driveway. They'll follow you out of the driveway and run you miles down the road to make sure you're not gonna challenge them whatsoever. The crazy part is when I asked a FBI agent that I'm friends with, I said, "Why can't we go and shut it down? We know it's a terrorist training camp. Why can't we shut it down?" And they said, "Well, because they have the same constitutional rights that protect you." And that's true. The same constitutional rights that protect me, that if I wanted to form a compound on my land and hold military training exercises on my land, I could, because I'm a U.S. citizen and the Constitution protects me. Somebody within the organization is a U.S. citizen, and because of that, they're able to do this, even though we know that. Well, here's the thing, and listen, what I'm about to share in total, I'm not trying to scare anybody. Again, if I was scared of Islam, I would not be going to Nigeria in March. That's just a no-brainer. I'm not scared of them. That if it, the wor what's the worst they're going to do? Kill me and I go see Jesus? Thank you. You just gave me a one-way ticket to home. So terrorist training camps are all across the country, all across the country. There's dozens
And
and dozens of them, and what people don't realize is that
I think
those.
somebody was trying to
Remember?
add something.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, I mean, that's true. I mean, I see personally, and I'm not trying to stay too long with this. I mean, even you just see the way women act in public, you can tell that they're like in my personal area, my neighborhood, I see polygamists, like a lot of polygamists. They don't broadcast themselves, but you can tell, you see all these women and all these babies and all these young wives, and they are not allowed out the house. When they are, they keep minimal conversation. I've seen women running out the house with marks on her face, but she can't say anything. There was a woman who's ran twice into my backyard with bruises on her face,
Oh, wow.
and the men are just, they're domineering. I don't like being around them. I feel
And
for
where do
those.
you live? What part of the world?
Grayson.
Oh yeah, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, yeah. They're
Wow.
they're they definitely they seep in and they keep their quiet, but you gotta be, that's why you have to use your eyes that God gave you. And don't just think, oh, they're just trying to, no, 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 no. Follow that instinct.
No, they want the same for you that they have for their own women. That's my
That's
that's
absolutely. And
yeah,
they're men,
and
they act the men pursue Christian women. I've been approached a lot
Yeah.
because the men are allowed to marry women of Abrahamic faith, so
Yeah.
Christians, but the women aren't allowed to, intermarry and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, thank you. I'm good.
Praise God for that. Yeah. No, I actually I've known several women who have been married to Muslim men, and I've watched through the years as um, that relationship they have with their husbands deteriorates through the years because of the way that Islam is set up. But again, I want to repeat as I started this whole thing off, just because somebody's Muslim doesn't mean this fits for them. What I'm saying is Islam. This fits for Islam. So if anybody is a actual follower of Islam, this fits. No, I was down in Atlanta about, let's see, this would have been 2015, I believe. Yeah, about 2015, somewhere around there. And there was a Atlanta Stands with Israel rally because Israel and Gaza had started going at it, and so there were several Christians and Jews who organized on the side of the street across from the CNN Center. There's probably 400 or 500 Christians and Jews. It was a good showing. On the other side, right in front of the CNN Center, by the time it was all said and done, there was 12 to 1500 um, Muslims who were sold out to Islam, and it started getting really ugly to the point where the police decided we need to march the Muslims out of this area before it gets any more dangerous. Well, I was filming the whole time. I was down there with my video camera and I'm filming, and I walk down. I'm kind of following this now parade as we're going down. And I'm filming, and all of a sudden the street cuts off, and I have to come closer to where they are because I was trying to keep my distance a little bit. And so but again, I'm not afraid of anybody. I mean, it just is what it is, you know. And so I cross over the street, and I'm standing there filming, and this guy ends up with the 3, 4 year old on his shoulders that he's got on his shoulders, ends up using the kid as a battering ram into me, calling me a child killer and shame on you, child. I've got it on video. Um, this guy had no fear of me. He had no fear of the law. It was pure hatred that I was an American Jew supporting American, and that's what I want to get across to people is we need to understand that Islam, who is a major force in the world, major force. If we had time, I would get into Islamic eschatology and how it mirrors Christian eschatology, and I believe the Antichrist is going to be of Muslim descent. I think he's going to have to be because of the amount of Muslims that he's going to have to persuade to accept, you know, everything that's going on with the Third Temple and stuff. But you know, like Germany, a third of Germany's army is all Muslim. It's virtually non-existent. If you want to go to the Paris, the city of love right now, you better bring a gun because Paris is virtually completely taken over by Muslims. It's a lot of Europe is completely taken over. That's their goal is to again, Islam means submission. And so again, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but what I'm trying to do is warn you to say that and while I'm warning you, the blood of Christ died for them too. When he hung on that cross, he hung on the cross for everybody. And so it would do us well, and there are thousands of Muslim converts every day for that matter who are awakening to the truth of Christ. It would do us well to keep that in mind that there are similarities between Islam and Christianity, meaning that they believe in Jesus. They Muhammad even said that Jesus was the greatest prophet among all prophets because he was a miracle working prophet and nobody else was a miracle working prophet. There's an entire chapter in the Quran. The Quran does not mention women at all, except for one chapter, and it's called Maryam, and that's Mary, the mother of Jesus. The entire chapter is dedicated to her, but they believe that Jesus didn't die, that he had a lookalike that went to the cross and fooled everybody into thinking he had gone to a crucifixion, but it wasn't him at all. It was a lookalike, and so Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, all those folks, it's common that they would have lookalikes, and what would happen is when pressure came amongst them, they would send the lookalike out the front door, distract everybody. They would leave out the back door, and that was their means of escape because they believe one of the prophets of their faith is Jesus, and that's how he got away with it. So they kind of emulate and mimic that tactic. And so, but again, you're back to deception, and so in Atlanta, that happened with me. Just north of me is where they train. They're here. There's a Mike Lacona, who is a good friend of our ministry. He just did. I haven't watched the whole thing because I'm just gonna be honest with you. I got ADD, and it's like 2 hours and 45 minutes long. I watched enough of it where he just did an interview with a counterterrorist expert on his podcast, and the counterterrorist expert said that the imminency of an attack on American soil from Islam is here. It's here. And I want you guys to understand something. There's all this uproar about ICE right now. I love truth. I love getting down to the facts behind things and being able to logically apply that. And I want you guys to understand ICE is not concerned with your average Latino who came over here and is trying to make a living for their family. Unfortunately, that's going to have some casualties who are sucked up and deported back home through the process. ICE is trying to find all the terrorists that came over here while our borders were wide open during the last administration. That's what they're trying to find. That's what Trump is after. He knows they're here. By the tens of thousands, they're here. And Islam at its core, and I hope I've done a good enough job of trying to unpack this as best as I can using kids' gloves without trying to make everybody fearful. Islam at its core wants you dead. Either die or convert. That's the two options. You can convert or you can die. That's the only two options that are out there. And so we've got tens of thousands of terrorists now, not just well-meaning people trying to escape their homelands, like what's happening in Iran right now. I don't know if you guys understand what's happening in Iran, but the Ayatollahs have run that uh, ideologically. I'm not even going to barely say theologically, but ideologically, have destroyed the people over there. They have sent them into poverty. They have sent them into a place where people can't survive. And just the other night, I was watching a live feed from Tehran, and the government over there, the government that's in control, literally blacked the entire country out. They killed the power, they killed the internet, they killed anybody's ability to communicate outside of Iran because they're slaughtering folks over there who are trying to overthrow the I'm going to say dictatorship, but it's a religious ideological dictatorship through the Ayatollahs that are trying to just push the people down. They burned 18 mosques in a couple of nights. When a Muslim burns down a mosque, do you think would a Christian burn down a church? No, we wouldn't do that. When a Muslim burns down a mosque, it's because they're not following Islam. They're Muslim by culture, but they're literally trying to revolt against this theological, ideological nightmare. So these things are going on all over the world, and the Islamic threat is real. It's a very real thing. I have a friend who's in the FBI that said if I knew what they knew about the present and Georgia being one of the worst in the country, which is just a weird thing as far as pockets of terrorist cells. But they said if we knew what they know, that we wouldn't even keep the safety on our guns on. We would be walking around with our safeties turned off, being ready. So my goal tonight was to give you some background on Islam. That's why we call it Islam for Dummies. Give you a little bit of what they believe, but really to make you understand that there is a threat. Be ready for it. Don't be scared of it. Be prayed up. Pray for opportunities to share our faith with them. Muslim people are very uh, what would you call that? They love being invited over for dinner. That's something that they enjoy. They will go to dinner at anybody's house. They're not they're not going to say no because you're not Muslim. They'll come to dinner. Come to dinner. I have that friend. Make a friend. Be a friend. Bring a friend to Jesus. Make a friend. Be a friend to them. They're again, Jesus' blood died for them too, and a lot of Muslims. While I don't believe there's such a thing as Islamic, a peaceful Islamic, regime, there's no such thing. There are peaceful Muslims, but again, they're no more Muslim than a person standing in a garage calling themselves a car. They're just Muslim by heritage. So don't be afraid of them. Try to share your faith with them as best as you can, but understand there is a real threat. And I hope you guys understand that what I'm trying to say, that it's not something that I walk around every day going, "Oh my goodness, what's going to happen?" But I'm aware of it. I don't keep my head buried in the sand. Amen.
True, that's very true. I'd say I think this all the time, just if basically what you just said, the true ones that are of that faith, you're gonna feel it. I personally feel it, and I'm trying to keep this like a gender neutral thing so everybody can relate, but
Sure.
it's kind of like I experience it differently as a woman. I can tell the ones who are just like, okay, my family does this. They'll even say that, oh, my family does this and we eat this food around this time of year. And you can tell that they're not really rooted in the religion. But when I work in customer service and I can tell the difference. I can tell when one of them is really in like Islamic and they treat you differently. They give you an eye, they give you an attitude that they don't give the male service workers. I've had to call the police on a Muslim man because he was so aggressive over the smallest things. So yeah, just keep your ears perked. And is that difference. You can tell the ones where it's just they eat this food around this time of year, versus the ones like as a woman personally, I can spot them because they move around you differently in public. Um, there's like a lustful side to it too. Um, yeah, it's crazy.
You're right. You're right. No, it's the same thing where like I can go to a restaurant and when we have a waitress I'll just go, "You're a Christian, aren't you?" I just know because I can sense the Holy Spirit in them, and I just know that they know the Lord, and I've been wrong once out of hundreds of times where I've been like, "You know the Lord." And one time I asked this girl at a restaurant, I said, "You must be a Christian." She's like, "Not at all." It's like, wow, that's weird. I usually can pick up on that, but other than that, you can tell. It's the same thing with somebody who is um is tied to the Islamic ideology. You know that it's evidenced in who they are. My biggest warning, I guess I can say, is this. There's a lot of Muslims here. There's a lot of Muslims here, and a lot of them are not practicing Islamic doctrine Muslims. But if a phone call comes through, like right now, Iran is threatening America. They can't do anything. They're dead in the water. They got nothing left. But if the Ayatollah puts out a phone call that says, "This is the side that you've got to stand on. Make up your mind." If a Muslim person decides, "I'm going to stand on the side of Quranic doctrine, of Quranic theology and ideology," they're going to have to absorb the fact that now it's life or death for you. And so I'm wondering how many of those are going to, err on the side of, "Well, I don't want to kill you," versus, "I don't have a choice but to kill you." Like I was just playing church, if you will. I was playing mosque for a while, but if that phone call comes across one day and says, "Okay, it's jihad. And now personal jihad is on, which side of jihad are you going to stand on?" I have a feeling most of them will end up falling on the wayside of Islamic doctrine and theology. And if that's the case, then we have a real problem on our hands, a real problem.
I have this is the optimist inside of me, but I have the opposite thought process whenever it comes to if the call from Ayatollah comes, whereas rather than it being a call to action for them to side with radical Islamic followers, they more so are like, this is really what you want me to do, and they see it as jihad or they see it as genocide, and they're like, I can't follow something like that, or I can't devote my life to something like that, and it causes them to look within themselves to question, do they really believe what the Islamic doctrine is? It's no longer just about tradition. It's no longer just about what your family does. Now you have to pick it up and identify with it and carry it out personally. So I would hope that they would do that, and it would cause them to go the opposite direction where it's like I can't align myself with a religion or a philosophy that says this is what the outcome is. You know what I mean?
Sure. I hope you're right. Yeah, I hope. And I think you are going to be right to at least a degree that it's going to cause a lot of people who by heritage because it's just heritage in Islam because the Quran makes no sense. We're just going to be honest. The Quran makes no sense. It's not in chronological order. It makes no. You have to be a scholar of scholars to begin to even understand Islam. So most Muslims, what they do, and this is very, very much the same with Judaism. They pick a few verses that fit it's called the verses, their family verses, and so they'll pick whatever their family verses are, and then it's a very oral tradition, meaning like they don't really read the Quran at all. They don't know and obviously they're not picking violent ones for their family because they want to live in peace for the most part. And so they've got peaceful Meccan verses that they're using that they're passing down from one generation to another based on tradition. And I pray that you're right that when that comes down, the moral side, the ethical side of everything is going to come down to a point where they go, I'm not down with that. I was
Well, the
I
reason
was
the
in
reason
for a
I
ride
say
up until
that
that.
the reason that I say that confidently for myself, anyways, is because I mean, if you look at anybody, everybody wants to be a good person, right? Like whether they're atheist or whether they're religious of some sort, they want to be a good person or they want to have good moral values. Obviously, we know that moral values come from Christianity. They come from God. Without God, we wouldn't have any moral standard to live by. But even just people that are atheists that consider themselves good people and all they want to do is live in happiness and you know what I mean? So things like that. So whenever it comes to people that are just living the Muslim lifestyle because it's what their family's done and it's what they grew up as, I think when something as radical as jihad comes along, I firmly believe that there's a vast majority of them. I'm sure there are some that are going to be pressured by their family, who are maybe of older generations that are like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're following, and they're going to go to that radical side. Versus, I think a lot of them are probably going to be like, man, I didn't realize that this was the
Yeah,
totality of what Islam means. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I can't follow that. But like I said, that's for me personally. This is all opinion too, at the end of the day, as far as where things are gonna go, because none of us can see the future. So that's my opinion. I want to say that.
I agree with that. I think the only thing we can mostly not speculate, but scripturally say, the war of Psalm 83. Those are all Muslim nations that are
Yeah,
listed in
yeah,
Psalm 83. So we know there's a time coming for Psalm 83 to happen, and it's going to be a time where Israel's attacked by the Muslim nations, as they were several times over the past uh, 70 plus years that they've been around. But then we've got Ezekiel 38 and 39, which a lot of people put that into Rosh, Russia and all that stuff. But if you look geographically on a map, directly north of Jerusalem is Turkey. That
yeah,
not Russia. It's I guess if you keep going past Turkey, you'll end up in Russia, but you're gonna end up in the middle of nowhere, frozen tundra of Russia. It's certainly not Moscow or anything like that. Um, I personally think Ezekiel 38 and 39 have to do with a Muslim war against Israel, a Muslim-led war against Israel. But again, as I started off by saying, if you really want to know what's going on, it's Ishmael and Isaac. It's those two that were born. Isaac was the promised son that Abraham had. The Muslims believe that Ishmael was the promised son because he was the firstborn, but they don't realize he was born in sin because Abraham should have never done what he did.
yeah,
He was not born under God's promise and provision. Here's the great part of God, though. If you go back to that incident when Sarah's kicking Hagar out, God tells Hagar, "Look, I'm going to be with you. I will make Ishmael a great
Well,
nation as
God
well."
keeps his promise, right?
He
No
he
matter
he
what,
told
he
him.
promised Abraham that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the sky. He didn't
Yep.
say only the descendants from Sarai, you know what I mean? So, if
Yeah.
anything, it's crazy that you said that because I was just thinking about that earlier whenever you were talking about that. How faithful is God to us as people that even whenever we we stoop so low as to work outside of his will, he's still faithful to honor his word and honor his promises to us
Yep.
because he can't not. That's him as God is always faithful to his word. He will always do what he said he's going to do.
Yep. No, and
And I
he
also,
told.
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off again. I want to say this. I was thinking whenever I said that about, the Islamic people, obviously we know what's going to happen through scripture. I meant more so like our Western American perspective, what's going to happen here in America. I'm sure in probably 90% of the rest of the world, it's going to be a much different scenario. You know what I mean?
I think
But
it's coming here too. That's why I don't think
no,
we're.
I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think it's here for sure. But typically Americans go to the fight rather than the fight come to them. But it's been quite some time since.
I would have agreed with you until COVID, and then I watched people just bow to the COVID god, and that was weird. You and Ben just drank that. I mean, that was like synchronized. Let me get a sip of my drink. That was so weird from my
I mean, to
on
be
here.
fair though, like we as Americans are supposed to be able to trust the people that we have elected through the democratic system as our leaders, right? And our leaders were all telling us that we needed to go and do this thing. So, it,
Mm,
historically.
call me untrustable.
Oh, I mean, if anybody knows me, I'm the biggest skeptic that they've ever met in their life. You know what I mean? Maybe not bigger than you are a skeptic, but I'm still a skeptic by nature, by any means. A chronic skeptic is what I call myself. So, but at the same time, like people that the vast majority of people are comfortable with who that they think has been elected into office because they think that through the democratic system they've been able to vote the best person that they see best aligns with their moral compass and their opinions and things like that. So
What
whenever
was
that
that?
person that they trust is elected and that tells them to do something, they're like, okay, I elected you, I trusted you, I'm going to do what
Yeah,
you're telling me to do. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So.
Um,
I
I
think.
had,
Yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry. What were you saying?
No, go ahead.
What the answer? Oh, I don't know. I'm just gonna put this out there, because I feel like it's something I've noticed. And so I wanted to know if you all have noticed this as well. But personally, like I said, I personally live in a very, very multi-ethnic community. And so there's basically any kind of faith, any kind of ethnicity you could find in my neighborhood. And so there's Muslims, there's Christians, there's Catholics, there's this, that, every continent. And one thing to be, I think, vigilant of is not just people who identify themselves as Muslims, but um, I think I don't know, maybe I'm not seeing stuff right, but tell me if you guys have been seeing this. People who identify as Christian, but it seems that, and for me, it would be more specifically like African. They're from countries where there's a high Muslim population, and they say that they're Christian, but when you see the way they live and they navigate life and how their families are structured, it would seem that they take after a very strong Islamic influence. I've, read the Bible with some of these people, and we'll go back and forth with scripture. But then their perspectives and how they run their families will be you'd think that they're Muslims, honestly, and I try not to sound too long-winded, but
I mean,
I know a lot of
that could
so-called
be Takia and Kitman, like what Dave was talking about
I
earlier.
think it's more. I think it's more culturally. When you get
Yeah.
outside of America, it's just different. We tick to the beat of our own drum here. We really do. We are a very unique, because we're such a melting pot, and
Mhm.
we've allowed ourselves to put up with everything. It doesn't matter if you're from France or Germany or Russia or China or Uzbekistan or does it just we've allowed that to kind of be when you go outside of this country, it's not like that anymore. Family structures are
Mhm.
completely different. The way that they view things is completely different. A lot of cultures, there's no such thing as adolescence, meaning like
Mhm.
when a child turns 13, they're no longer a child anymore. They're an adult, and they're expected to do adult things and stuff like that. And the way that men and women are viewed are completely different than we have here in America, where our men are women and our women are men. You know what I mean? That's not normal in other parts of the world. Like it's just when you go over to Africa, the entire talk of transgender is laughable to them. They don't even understand that. It doesn't. But the men are revered over the women in the sense that when they say head of household, they mean it. Here in America, when we say head of household, we kind of mean it, sort of, maybe. So it's
Oh,
it's just
I guess what I more so meant, and I'm really not trying to sound long-winded. For
yeah, no, you're
me, it's
fine.
the biggest thing would be like again the polygamy. There's like a lot of polygamy in
Uh,
like I've gone over to their houses and the way that they change their energy when I enter the house, like there's women who are significantly younger, and this has happened at multiple houses. They take the children upstairs and you don't see them. Like
yeah,
immediately. You're not even allowed to say hi. And I'm like, isn't she like I'm trying not to get too personal or specific, but it's like
yeah,
I know in their culture, like having children out of wedlock is extremely looked down upon, and they
yeah,
express this very openly. But then when you see a younger, like 20 something year old, and she's been given a car by the head of household, and she has a baby, but you never see like another man in the house. You're like, wait a minute,
yeah,
who's and why is she always in this house? And
yeah.
it's just like when I look at that, I'm just like, you say that you're Christian, but the way that you do certain things, it's
I
just like,
see what you're saying.
yeah, that's what I've seen a lot of.
And you're right. I wish you were wrong, but you're not. You're right. There's a lot of, well, I mean, there's let's just call a spade a spade. What was his Philip Yancey, one of the greatest Christian leaders of our time, just a few days ago said, I've been having an affair on my wife for the last 9 years. And it just let me know, like, we're broken. We're just we're a broken people. We need Jesus more than ever in every asset of our life and every situation and every square inch. Like there's not an area of our lives that we don't need to be crying out in a real way. Because I mean, I was, it was the same thing when Ravi Zacharias died, and all of a sudden you found out that he had all these women that he was I would say torturing the way that he was treating them and all this stuff. And he was one of the greatest Christian apologists who's ever lived. And so it lets me know that we live in a very broken world, and we need each other. We need to hold each other accountable. We need to pray for each other. We need to
Yeah.
realize that none of us are above board when it comes to these things and so I pray for those families who say I'm Christian, but they've got fruit of nothing but the world. It saddens
Yeah.
my heart. It really
And
does.
this is my final note. I say all that I've said not to, again, like be paranoid, but just as a note to just because someone will say that they're Christian or say that they're this and that, you have to look at the fruits in their life.
Yeah.
You can't just say like I I was doing like I was getting a lot of spiritual advisement from these families. And this is again, this is not all. It's just you have to see it on the individual level and judge it that way. But because I have a lot of African friends being Caribbean myself, um, you can't just hear someone say, I'm a Christian. You have to look at their life and see, are you following biblical principles or are you following the culture that is popular wherever you're from or whatever nationality, because I've seen many who say they're Christian, but then they live like Muslims, and it's like, no, can't take advisement, spiritual advisement from someone like that.
I totally, well, that's why I started the whole thing off by saying, does standing in a garage make you a car? No. Does standing in a church make you a Christian? No. Christianity is, Christianity is something that I take very seriously. That we ought to again be watching our P's and Q's with everything that we do and how we act and how we talk, the language that we use, the way that we come across with our attitudes when we're in a grocery store or in a school or wherever we're at. Just can people see Christ in us? And obviously with what you're talking about with the situations that I don't see Christ in that. And so you can claim to be Christian all you want, but I mean, that's a good lesson for all of us to think about is, not just who do we trust to let inside of our circles of influence, but are we emulating Christ in the way that people would look at our lives and see Christ? Are we doing something that people would say, I want to know what's up with that person because I want what they have? Are we living a life that way? That's something I think we all need to wrestle with. Any questions out there? Thoughts, concerns?
I think you did a great job then.
I
What is?
mean,
Oh,
I
I
that's
always
just
love when I
have one
teach so well that
question.
there's no questions.
I do have one question. I just didn't. It is about Islam, but I didn't know if it would fit for
Yeah.
today's conversation. Um, in giving, like, we know what we're to do as Christians because the scripture directs us, but I've had friends who are not Christian, some who have been like of Islam, that faith, and they've asked me for advice on how to go about things. And some questions are easy to answer because they're just universal, they can fit into any lifestyle. But then when it gets into certain institutions like what does your faith say about marriage and how to conduct yourself as a wife? And I've had friends who are like Muslim girls, and I don't know if I can advise them the way I advise one of my Christian sisters. For example, submission is very important, but then I don't know if I'm to say that to someone who's not a Christian,
No,
specifically
absolutely not.
a Muslim girl. Do I say that? I don't want to tell her to
Absolutely,
submit to
absolutely
someone.
not. And here's why. If a wife is to be submissive to her husband, it's because the husband is following Christ so boldly that he loves her and is willing to give his life for her. That's whenever I hear men go, "Women submit to your husbands,"
they
I'm
didn't
like, keep
read far
reading.
enough.
Yeah, keep reading because the worst part's coming for you. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church, willing to lay his life down for her. And so, if a husband is, I work with the youth a lot, and I tell young ladies like a non-Christian man can't love you the way that you're ought to be loved. It's not possible. The man has to know God. The man has to be sold out and saved by the grace of God and filled with the Holy Spirit in order to love you properly. And so if a woman's in a relationship with a non-Christian, whether that be Muslim or not, if it's a non-Christian, they can't love you the way that God has designed for you to be loved. And so, no, it would be absolutely terrifying to tell a Muslim woman to live in submission because that's what the Bible says, because that's not what the Bible says. It says be in submission to a godly man, to a man who is filled with the Holy Spirit. And so, no, I wouldn't say that's something you need to share with them at all. What I would do is I would use it as a platform. Just here's the way I think about stuff. I would use that as a platform to say, do you understand how in Islam, God does not love you. God is too far beyond Allah, is too far beyond human relations to love anybody. That's beyond their. And so the last time I was in Africa and I was in front of a school filled with Christians and Muslims, and I wasn't allowed to share my faith unless somebody asked me. So I just started off by saying, God loves you. I didn't specify Jehovah or Allah. I just simply kept repeating the sentiment that God loves you and He cares about you because I knew, and we're talking about, Nigerian Muslims that I'm talking to, so it's different than Western Muslims. Um, I knew that by telling them that God loved them, that it was breaking their barriers down because they don't understand that part. And so I would use the opportunity with a young lady who's in that situation to say, "Do you realize you are the apple of his eye? You are the core of his being. You are so special to him that he wants you to be loved by a man that can only love you by the power of the Holy Spirit that's inside of that man." And I would use that as an opportunity to shift the conversation to say, look, you mean so much to him that you deserve a good godly man to lead you, a good godly man who can love you the way that he plans to have you loved, and so that would be my approach to that one.
That really cleared up that side of my mind because I've always thought about that, but I didn't really know how.
Amen.
I wanted to ask somebody who has specific knowledge on Islam. I didn't expect to think this question also, but another thing on Islam, if I'm not taking up too much time.
You're good.
Recently, I spoke with a Muslim friend, and he asked me, "How's Christmas? How's that going for you?" And I was like, good." I was kind of like, "Aren't you Muslim?" I know that they believe that Jesus existed, but of course not as God. So then I wanted to ask them, but I didn't want to ask them because I wasn't sure how Muslim they are. When I finished speaking with them, they were like, "Okay, have a good Christmas, enjoy." And I'm like, "Okay, thank you." Is that what Islam says to do? Like, are they supposed to like cheer you on?
No, that's an adopted Western mindset. It's funny that you say that because I was just in the airport in Detroit a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, and there was a big giant Christmas tree set up with two Islamic girls taking pictures of each other, trading off, taking pictures of each other in front of the Christmas tree. And I wanted so badly to just go, "Do you realize what that is? Like you're taking a picture in front of there. Do you even realize what you're doing?" But I didn't mess with them. But what I realized is it's just being absorbed into the culture that we're in over here that you can't
Mhm.
get away from Christmas. So they don't necessarily believe in Christmas as the birth of Christ or celebrate that. But it's just something that they can't avoid. And so it's 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 just part of us infecting their heritage by being the culture that we are, which is why I'm always saying, like, I'd make a strong, strong, strong case to say that I think December 25th was his birthday. With that said, I don't really care. All I know is everybody from every walk and tongue is singing praise songs to God during that time, and I'm good with that. Like as Paul said, whether he preached in vain or not, at least he's being preached, and so I would give celebration for the fact. But no, I don't think they knew what they were saying by any stretch of the imagination when they said "Have a happy Christmas." I just think that was culturally what they knew to do. Just like if you go over to another culture, you try and be as respectful as you can to their culture. When I'm down in Latin America, I try as everything I can to be respectful to that culture. It's not my culture. I don't understand it, but I try and be respectful to it.
Yeah, they did say
Taylor,
oh,
oh, go ahead.
they said oh well, I hope you have a peaceful Christmas. Islam is a religion of peace. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's those Muslims who don't understand their own religion because they don't read the Quran, they don't do any study. They're just by tradition, they're family adopted peaceful verses, which most of them do, and so to them, they in and of themselves and their family are quote unquote peaceful, but it's not because they're following strict. If you want to know what Islam is, look at ISIS. If you really want to know the core of Islam, look at ISIS, look at Hezbollah, look at Hamas, look at any of those that look at the Houthis. Like look that's Islam. That's what the fundamental Islam is.
The
So
cootie.
everything else is a mirage of Islam. But if you really want to know what Islam is, look at the terrorist organizations because they're the only ones following the Quran, the doctrine of the Quran specifically. Everybody else is just by heritage. Yeah, it's the same thing when I went to Israel and they had this saying that was driving me crazy. The Jewish folks over there say tradition over truth. Ugh. As a Christian apologist, that was driving me nuts. I'm like, you can't have tradition over truth. That's not how this works. But that's how it works over there. That's why they still wear the same funny hats and the same things. They all look the same and have the curly cues coming down, and just it because that is the tradition of Europe that they came out of when they re-entered the land of Israel, and so they carry over that tradition. In the same way, Muslims just carry over a lot of traditions that's been passed down from generation to generation. And yeah, there's a lot of peaceful Muslims out there. And Mark, I hope you're right when that call comes across for personal jihad that they decide I'm not going that direction. Like there's something that I pray that that conviction leads them to Christ, that they'll say, I'm not
Well,
following that.
because a
I
lot of
didn't
them, like you
realize.
said, man, a lot of them really do think that it's a peaceful religion, like because they don't actually, like you said, man, it's funny that they don't. A lot of them don't even believe in reading the Quran, the Qur'an, and the what's the other
So
one?
right.
The Surat. They don't even believe in reading that anymore, just because it's so. They think it's so far-fetched. You know what I mean? Like.
Well, I
There's
don't understand it.
there's different versions of stuff that they read now. You know what I mean? Anyways, saying all that to say this, I when I said all that, I specifically meant for Western America. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Well, I hope you're right about all of it. That's why I'm saying, like, I think Iran right now, you've got a bunch of human beings who are trying to overthrow what they believe is an Islamic threat to their families, even though
yeah,
they're living over there and they call themselves Muslims. They realize that when within themselves they don't want the leadership that's been there. So
yeah.
I pray it happens to all
Taylor
of
had
them.
a question.
Yeah, I was trying to understand it. Can
Can
you
you
explain the
explain?
green light on the
He
world?
posted a picture the other day on Facebook
Yeah.
of the green light on top of the World Trade Center.
Oh, I thought green light like go. I,
Jokingly, I was gonna put that in the chat, but then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna.
I thought green light like you got my permission to go. No, so the the green lighting. So Mamdani is the new mayor, and one of his first actions was to light up the top of the World Trade Center, One World Trade Center, which is the replacement buildings of the ones that fell down in 2001. He lit it up Hezbollah green because of what's going on between I'm sorry, Hamas green, which is the Israel and Hamas war that's been going on for years now, and well, since Ishmael and Isaac, if we really want to get back to it. But he was celebrating Hamas green as as his way, as the Muslim Islamic way of saying we've created victory over this. And that's what one of the biggest mosques in America is built on top of World Trade Center. There's a museum there that they turned into a mosque right afterwards because what Muslims do is when they conquer something, they build a mosque on top of it to celebrate it. So if you go to Istanbul right now, Turkey, which used to be Istanbul, and now or I'm sorry, used to be Constantinople with Constantine's rule. Now it's Istanbul. There's seven hills in Turkey with seven. Well, there's six mosques on six of the hills, which used to be Christian-run churches, and there's one museum that's on the other hill. So there's seven hills with seven different Muslim commemorations to victory. And so the green light on top of One World Trade Center commemorated Muslim victory over that. And so 24 years later, we've got an Islamic mayor celebrating Muslim victory over that area, and that was just. I'm not gonna lie, that one made me mad. I'm not gonna lie, that one, America. I was a little bit upset with that one.
Yeah. Um, Guys, just for the sake of time and everything, if we have any other questions or anything like that, this chat is open 24/7 and you always have access to it. So drop questions in here. And I will make sure that they get directed to my dad and between the two of us, we will get them answered.
Yeah.
But excuse me.
Before you
Uh,
go, I want to point this out. Equip you. Go
yeah,
see.
that's what I was going to. Go ahead and mark this down in your calendars. Monday, January 26th. That's when our next meeting is for R&R. So go ahead and mark that down in your calendars, write it down. Um, but if you want to know more about Islam, check out our equipu.org. And for $4.99 a month, you can sign up. And there's already four different curriculum courses on there, along with a lot more in-depth teaching on Islam and things like that. And then we're constantly adding courses to that as well. So you're just going to continue to see it grow and move forward and look better.
Yeah,
But
over the next 3 or 4 months, we're going to be adding 6 to 8 more courses up there. So
yeah,
there's four right
so
now. There'll be upwards of 10 or 12 in the next 3 months, and it's
yep.
enough to keep you busy.
For $4.99 a month, equipu.org, and it'll keep you busy, and it's exciting stuff that's on there too. And
Dude, I'm just finishing up a talk on hermeneutics. That man, when I teach hermeneutics, like I just taught it a couple of weeks ago in Wisconsin, but I can only go over, this much. Whereas on Equip You, I can expound on it, and man, I'm excited. I'm about to start recording it tomorrow, and I've got all the stuff done, and all I've got to do is record it, hit the edit video, send it over to Holly. She designs a whole course around it, and so that'll be up within the next 30 days. But that one there, man, if you're a Christian at any level, go through that. I just putting the course together, I learned stuff. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
just making sure I was teaching it properly. I was learning stuff about how to read the Bible, transformed the way that I look at Scripture. So that's another exciting one that's going up there.
amen. But